They said the Viking Age was mapped, its roots traced, its secrets long uncovered. But then, a lone archaeologist took to the sea, not in search of battle, but in pursuit of forgotten ports. No GPS, no compass. Just a handmade Viking-style boat, the brutal Norwegian coast, and 3 relentless years of wind, waves, and wonder. In May 2025, the Journal of Archaeological Method and Theory published the results of this extraordinary mission. And the man behind it, Greer Jarrett, a doctoral archaeology student at Lund University in Sweden, had done something few modern researchers ever dare. He didn't just study Viking seafaring, he lived it. Jarrett set out to answer a question that had long haunted Viking scholars. Not about where their voyages started or ended. We already knew about the bustling ports of Dublin, York and Ribe, but about the mystery in between. Where did they stop? Where did they rest, regroup, trade or share stories mid-voyage? To find out, Jarrett built and sailed a fairing, a traditional 4-oared Viking boat, light enough to row but hardy enough to withstand the open sea. The boat, handcrafted using centuries-old techniques, became more than a vessel. It became a bridge, a time machine, a tool to navigate both water and history. This fairing was clinker-built, each plank overlapping the next, a method dating back to at least the 8th century. Lightweight, fast and durable, these boats were the backbone of Viking inshore travel, used for fishing, trading and exploring. Though smaller than a longship, they captured the same Viking essence: elegant simplicity and unforgiving strength. From the city of Trondheim in central Norway, Jarrett launched his epic 3,100-mile, 5,000-kilometre experimental voyage. His course ran along the jagged Norwegian coast, stretching all the way to the Arctic Circle and back. It wasn't just a test of endurance, it was a living laboratory. Out at sea, Jarrett learned that these boats, while small, were far better suited to the open ocean than to the tight inlets and winding fjords many historians had assumed Vikings preferred. "This type of boat sails well on open water in tough conditions," he said. "But navigating close to land and in the fjords sometimes presents challenges." And those challenges weren't just physical. The mental toll of open sea travel in such a modest vessel was immense. Crew members faced violent weather, cold rains and sleepless nights. Provisions were sparse. There were no cabins. Every drop of water mattered. Every degree of wind mattered. But slowly the hardships revealed something deeper, the profound precision and psychological endurance required of Viking sailors. Every hour on the water became a meditation on survival, on trust, on the delicate balance between human will and nature's force. Jarrett's hands grew calloused on the oars, his senses tuned to shifts in the clouds, the sting of salt, the echo of waves against distant rock. This was no simulation. It was a rediscovery of a lost way of being. This insight flipped a long-held assumption on its head. Vikings weren't merely coastal huggers. They may have preferred to travel farther out in open water, where wind was steadier, where danger came fast but predictably, and where skilled seamanship could mean the difference between profit and peril. Along the way, Jarrett didn't just trust the wind. He also relied on people. Interviewing local Norwegian fishers and sailors, he gathered oral traditions and maritime knowledge passed down through generations. These stories, layered atop his sailing data and combined with topographic reconstructions of the Viking Age coastline, led him to a groundbreaking discovery. He identified 4 previously unknown Viking harbours, havens, as he called them, tucked into islands and promontories, precisely where ancient seafarers would have needed refuge from sudden storms or a place to trade goods with passing crews. These weren't cities. They weren't fortified settlements. They were small, strategic and accessible. The kind of places you'd only recognise if you knew how to read the sea. And that's exactly what the Vikings did. These were not brute raiders mindlessly charging the shores, they were navigators, master sailors, observers of birds, clouds, tides and stars. Their world pulsed to the rhythm of the wind and the swell of the sea. Their success depended on it. These hidden harbours suggest a complex network of stopover points, a maritime infrastructure that allowed the Vikings to expand their influence not just through brute strength, but through collaboration, timing, and savvy navigation. Because unlike many later civilizations, the Vikings didn't have compasses. They relied on mental maps, landscapes of memory, intuition, and storytelling. And the harbours may have served a social purpose too, as rendezvous points where sailors could share news about weather, trade conditions, and hostile forces. Jarrett's findings give us a glimpse into how those mental maps were built. A crew might rest at one haven, hear rumours of distant raids and set their course accordingly. These weren't just pit stops, they were waypoints in a vast and often invisible web of Norse knowledge. They speak to an overlooked truth of the Viking Age. It wasn't only about conquest, but about logistics. The ability to trade, rest, and regroup meant the difference between thriving and vanishing in the cold expanse of the North Atlantic. The voyage also reminded Jarrett of the deeply human side of Viking travel: interpersonal endurance. A crew confined to a small craft for weeks on end needed harmony. A single clash, a moment of mistrust, could turn deadly. Viking exploration, Jarrett realized, wasn't just a triumph of navigation. It was a triumph of cooperation. In his published study, Jarrett emphasizes that these findings remain hypotheses. He hasn't yet excavated the sites, but signs like jetties, ballast stones, cooking pits, or makeshift shelters would confirm human use, and perhaps Viking presence specifically. An excavation is no small step. These sites, exposed to centuries of erosion and tidal shifts, may hold fragile evidence of ancient use. But even the potential of discovering a hearth where Norse sailors once warmed their hands, or a stone jetty where fairings were tied off, could transform what we know about daily Viking life at sea. Jarrett's research also invites us to reconsider what a Viking harbour actually looked like. Not every port needed to be grand. In fact, many may have been deliberately small, chosen for their concealment, their ease of access, and their strategic placement in the Norse mental map. The implications ripple outward. If these 4 havens exist, how many more lie undiscovered? How many dots are still missing in the vast matrix of Viking travel? This work is a call to archaeologists and maritime historians alike. The sea still holds secrets. Jarrett's journey didn't just reveal ports, it unearthed possibilities. That Viking success wasn't just about fierce warriors and longships, but about cooperative crews, strategic planning, and a deep, adaptive relationship with nature. "You need a boat that can withstand all kinds of weather conditions," Jarrett said. "But if you don't have a crew that can cooperate and put up with each other for long periods, these journeys would probably be impossible." The Viking Age, in other words, wasn't built on chaos. It was built on discipline, on trust, on navigating not just seas but relationships. Their power lay not just in their swords but in their networks, in their shared knowledge, in their ability to turn the unforgiving sea into a pathway of connection. And perhaps that's the real revelation. These were not just warriors or raiders, they were systems thinkers. Strategic explorers who mastered the oceans through networks as invisible as the stars they followed. As for Jarrett, he's still just getting started. Excavations at the 4 sites may begin in the future. If evidence supports his claims, it could revolutionize how we understand Viking mobility, trade, and settlement patterns. So next time you picture a Viking ship slicing through cold northern waters, don't imagine a mad dash from one port to another. Imagine a web, a fluid, ever-shifting web of knowledge, seafaring, and shared survival. And remember the archaeologist who didn't just imagine history, he sailed into it. Because sometimes to find the past, you have to chase the wind. Subscribe for more stories that sail beyond the textbooks. From sunken civilizations to the frontiers of science, every week we voyage into the unknown. Hit the bell to never miss a discovery.